Hey, folks. Hey, folks. Welcome to another live Facebook session with Yes Employment. Give me one moment. I'm going to quickly share my slides here. All right. Hopefully everybody can see this. So yes, welcome. My name is Cindy Tibbles. I am a employment consultant with here at Yes Employment with the Youth Job Connections program. So the topic for this afternoon is cold calls. So this is a strategy on how to get proactive with your job search. So um, it's really about not waiting for those job postings to be listed on places like Indeed, those job search engines. It's getting access to jobs before they're posted. So let's just jump right in and get to it. Oh, I should say before, there is a link below that gives you access to a survey. So please, folks, if at any time, preferably at the end of the presentation, if you could do that survey, it's just a quick 1 or 2 questions, I think, so it won't take much of your time. Thank you ahead if you do that. So yes, so cold calling, what is it? Cold calling, essentially, it's reaching out to employers by phone whom you've never been in contact with before, and you're marketing yourself to them. It's why do you do it? If we look at this diagram here, essentially, cold calling is one strategy to access that hidden job market. So about 4 out of 5 jobs are not posted. So the only way to access them is through uh, word of mouth or through your networking. As you can see in this diagram here, the way that uh, typically job seekers look for work is starting from the top on this diagram here. So looking online at advertisements and job boards. So this is the open job market and it's very competitive. So you are competing with everyone, right? And so likely there's someone who's maybe more qualified than you are. Um, and so it's very difficult to get those jobs that are posted. It's very competitive. And then so if we go down the pyramid here, you can see that at the bottom, where employers actually start their recruitment for possible candidates is internally. So they will go to, internally at their agency. They will ask existing staff members or their within their own personal network of contacts. Then they might reach out to professional organizations and recruitment agencies, and finally through the open market. So if you look at this diagram, there is a discrepancy between how mostly people typically look for work versus how employers actually do their marketing and their recruitment. So one strategy to get access to employers before they reach their final, if they're really having a hard time filling positions, when they'll finally go to that job board or the online job market, is through cold calling. So we're going to talk about it. All right. So before you start cold calling, reaching out to employers and marketing yourself, it's important that you get organized. So you need to keep track of who it is that you're contacting, when you're contacting them. So the name of the person that you spoke with, keeping track of what was said in that conversations, what questions you asked, and if you require to follow up with them. So how you do that really is up to you. You can go very elaborate and do a full on like Excel spreadsheet, or you can just do it by hand and keep track, with a pen and paper. Whatever you're comfortable with, as long as you are keeping track. Um, This is just to set yourself up for the most for success, right? Um, you want to make sure that you have your resume with you on hand and that it's up to date, right? So that you have the most um, updated information that you can share with the employer if they do ask you any questions about, like in more detail about your experience. So that's really your first step before you make any contact is ensure you have your resume up to date and you have your tracking system developed. And then you need to create a list of employers that you're going to contact. So that brings us to the question, who do you contact? How do you find out who the employers are and who the main contact is? Right, so here is where you need to do your research. There's lots of places that you can go to look for contacts. There's business directories online so that you could search for local businesses. And these directories are often organized by industry or by sector. Um, so you can look on places like Yellow Pages. The Chamber of Commerce has a business directory. Um, you can look through, you can even just Google like a particular um, sector that you're interested in. If you want to work at, for example, um, you want to work in as a you want to do mechanical work, you want to work in a shop, you would just Google that, or you might have to get very creative. And I'll give you an example. Say you are interested in working with children. Maybe you have your early childhood education diploma, or maybe that's an aspiration. You want to work with children, and you just want to get your foot in the door, and maybe work as an ECE assistant or daycare helper, um, or even nowadays, most daycares have someone screening, doing pre-screen for COVID symptoms, and doing sanitization. Um, so you could look for a directory of all the licensed childcare and any registered recreational services for youth. You could do that through the District of Nipissing Social Services Administration Board. Um, they have a full list, and that list has like specifics on the age of children and the specific contact, their address, and then you would research their website and you would find out who is the best contact, who is the person that is responsible for hiring. So often that, we would say the hiring manager. Um, if they have an HR department, then like, a lot of businesses in North Bay, for example, they're very small and they may not have an HR department. So you would ask to speak with the person who is responsible for hiring. So yes, you might have to get creative, but really everything is online, right? So you can find, if you know the type of work that you're interested in doing, you can search that way for the specific employers. Or maybe you don't have a particular sector in mind. Like maybe, for example, if you know you want to work in retail, you could search for retail. But if you don't know, then you could start in the Yellow Pages and just start alphabetically. Start with A and work your way down and see what employers interest you, and research the company's website, find out more about them before you do reach out to them. um, I will say by accessing yes employment services, you're already reaching out to a network. So you've already taken that step, right? You're doing great research. If you found us, that means that you know how to tap into a network. So I trust you have the research skills needed to find employers. But certainly that is something that we can help as well, to help you to generate that list of potential employers. So once you have your list, you need to determine, like I said, the specific contact at that place. So if you can't find it online on their website, then you could do a quick call beforehand and ask, if it's a larger company, they might have someone working at reception, like an admin person. And you could ask that person just, point blank, who is the person responsible for hiring? at your organization. And hopefully they give you a name. If they ask, the purpose, I would say don't say it's for jobs. I'm looking for employment opportunities, because they might direct you to their formal application process, maybe which is might be online, so that you might not get that opportunity to speak to someone. So I would say, you could say you're doing some research, or maybe you want to address. You could say you want to you're writing a letter, an application letter, and you want to know who to address it to. And then you would hang up, and then later you would call again and ask to speak to that person directly. So that's the way around it. Okay, so now what are you going to say, right, when you call? It's important that you prepare a script, and that script should um, encompass your what we call a marketing pitch or your sales pitch. Um, you want to introduce yourself, but you also want to make sure you want to ask initially, is this a good time to speak? Because maybe you might notice that it's really busy in the background. It sounds like they're really busy and it might not be a good time. So it's important to preface your conversation first with, is now a good time to talk, or is there a time that we can arrange that would be better suited for you? So you're telling them, I'm aware that your time is valuable. I appreciate your time, and you want to make it uh, so that they see that demonstration of respect. So if they say yes, now is good, I have a couple minutes, okay, great, you have their ear. So it's important to be brief. You want it to be no more than 30 seconds, this marketing pitch that you have. This is a great tool to have. It's great to help you prepare for an interview as well. If you don't have this 30-second marketing pitch prepared yet, I strongly encourage you to do it. It's great for networking in any context. Um, but for the purposes of cold calling, it's absolutely critical that you have this pitch scripted and you've practiced it. So this should be tailored as well to each employer that you're speaking to. Um, but essentially, this is the framework for it. So you're saying who you are. So explain your background, your work experience, and education that is relevant, right? Again, you're tailoring it to this employer. And what makes you particularly unique? What separates you from other possible candidates? So you're going to highlight your strength. So what makes you an excellent candidate, an excellent um, prospective employee for them? What would make you an asset to them? And then finally, what is your goal? So the reason why you are calling, right? You should make note of your career aspiration, your particular goal. So what area of work are you looking for within that company that you're calling? Um, and if so, I'm going to give you an example of this, but before I do, I also want to say that it's important to have some questions prepared for that particular employer. Um, so you might ask that for some particular advice or information regarding positions that they're hiring for now or in the near future. So you're wanting to the whole purpose of this call, right, is to get access to that hidden market. Maybe they have a position that is not posted right now, but it's in the works. Maybe they'll tell you that, okay, I don't have anything right now, but we are thinking about it, and we might be hiring in a week or in a month or in the new year. So you want to make note of that, right? This is another reason why you have a tracking system. You're making note of what they say, and any possible follow-up and when. Um, you 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 might want to ask, you've done your research on this company, right? So you might want to ask something specific about the company that you're interested in. You know, can you tell me a bit more about, this particular department at your work, and what, of course, what opportunities might exist, right? So if you are calling and in your quest to reach someone, you get a voicemail, it's important again that you make note of when you left that voicemail and make note in the voicemail of when you're going to follow up, right? So you're going to call them back. Um, and in your conversation as well, how it ends, you might say, okay, I'm going to follow up with you in an email. I will send you my resume in an email. Whatever you agree to do, make sure that you make note of it and that you do so. So I'm going to give you an example of a possible, an example of a marketing pitch. So I have recently graduated with a degree in criminology and have previously worked with youth in a summer camp for 3 summers. I have extensive experience managing the needs of youth with conduct disorders, and I did a placement at an attendance center for youth in conflict with the law. I'm looking for an opportunity that will allow me to build upon my experience working with youth. Now this is very formal. So this is an example where you'll have this written as a script, but when you say it, when you're on the phone with the employer, if you're someone who's not naturally very formal, it might come off as being scripted. So you want to practice this over and over and over until it comes natural, and you're not going to read it when you're speaking on the phone. It should come off naturally, so you don't want to read it. So you practice it enough that hopefully it sticks and you have some of it memorized. But when you say it, let it flow however it comes naturally. So that brings me to this, why it's so important to practice, practice, and practice. It's going to change, and each time you do it with an employer, you're going to get better at it, and you're going to tailor it to that employer. And so for this reason, because your first time doing it, you might come off a bit awkward because it's your first time doing it. So I encourage you not to contact that one employer that you're dying to work for initially, right? You want to build up to that employer. So start with a few initially that maybe you're less interested in working for. They're equally important, but you want to practice not with the employer that you've prioritized as your number one place that you want to work. You can practice with a friend, with a family member. You can certainly, this is something that you could do with, yes, employment staff, with your employment consultant. There's opportunities for you to practice. You can also record yourself saying your script and listen back and hear yourself. Most of us have a smartphone, right? So you can record yourself doing it, practice that way, listen back. Um, yes, but certainly practice. It's a good way to build confidence, right? The more you do it, the more confident you'll be. So if you are someone who's feeling particularly nervous about making these calls, um, the more reason to practice. And this is great too, because this is a skill. Like I said, this 30-second pitch, it's useful in so many different contexts. So the more you do it, it'll just come off naturally for you. Okay. And then finally, as I said, so we are always keeping track of who we are contacting and the next steps. So as I said, if you leave a message with the employer, like a voicemail, or if that person happened to be in a meeting when you called and whoever you spoke with, let them know what your next steps are. So, okay, thank you so much. If you could please pass on this message that I will be calling them back within 2 days, let's say. Or if you've spoken to them over the phone, it's important to do a follow-up in an email would be a good idea. As I said, you can send your resume, or perhaps if they'd said, they're not hiring right now, but they will be possibly hiring in a week or next month, whatever it was. Be sure that you follow up then, send your resume, and make that follow-up call in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, whatever it was that you agreed to. Um, yes, it's just, you want to build that credibility. If you say you're going to do something, it's important that you do it, right? So keeping in mind these phone calls, the intention is always to get access to jobs before they are posted online, right? So that open market where you see the jobs posted online is highly competitive. You're competing with everyone. The the hidden market is your opportunity to tap into those jobs before so that you're not competing with everyone else. And sometimes these calls, they might not lead to anything. So you're going to make lots of calls, but it only takes one, right? So don't get discouraged. Keep calling. Set yourself, a small goal to start. You might say, okay, today I'm going to call 5 employers. You do your research. You find out as much as you can about that employer so that you feel prepared when you call to ask a good question about that company. You've practiced your script. You feel like you have a really good sense of your strengths and your resumes on hand. You have your pen and paper or your Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is, you're ready to track, and you will find success. And then the next day, maybe you'll say, you know what, 5, that was pretty manageable. Maybe the next day you'll do 10 employers. But it's just about the idea of doing your research, putting in the time, um, and building relationships with employers. It's a way of networking, um, and employers will appreciate this. And a good thing about cold calling right now with COVID is that employers don't necessarily want you going into their place of work. Safety is number one right now. So a phone call is much appreciated, versus going in person, right? So now is actually a really good time to be cold calling. And if there's no opportunity, again, it's about building a relationship with that person and following up later. Um, you know, some employers might not be interested, but you keep trying and you'll find someone who is. Um, that was it that I had prepared. So as I mentioned, there is a survey link below, to access, just to let us give us some feedback. It's completely anonymous. So it's 1 or 2 questions. It's just going to take a couple minutes, and we would greatly appreciate it so we know how to improve for the future. So on that note, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon.